welcome to the Stafford Excellence EdTalk podcast series, where we celebrate the incredible excellence and brilliance of our Stafford County Public School educators. Today on the podcast, you guys are in for a treat as we have CJ Cahill, a high school science teacher from Brooke Point High School. CJ, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dan. I'm really excited to be here today, and I really appreciate you reaching out for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Hey, so, we're currently in the beginning of the second week of school. So my first question is, how are you doing? How does it feel to be back in the building? Where are you at right now?
Yeah, and, this is a question that's going around, kind of everywhere. This is the first time, I have 30 students in all of my blocks. I haven't had 30 students in a classroom together since, March 12th, 2019. And so, trying to get comfortable navigating that and trying to help the students get comfortable navigating, this is probably the most people they've been exposed to in a long period of time.
Absolutely, yes. And I'm just in awe of every educator right now, because on top of just the, all of the things that come with the beginning of the school year, we also, like we were talking before we started recording, we are still in a pandemic, and we have all of these other issues as educators coming our way. So, educators are absolute rock stars. So I just wanted to since this is only our second episode, I kind of wanted to just kind of remind everyone kind of the structure of our EdTalk podcast. So it's kind of broken into three different parts. Our first part is all about your story. The second part is telling us about your excellence. And then finally, we end with your thoughts. So we are going to get kicking right now with your story. So CJ, just to kind of kick it off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I grew up Virginia Beach, Virginia. I was, really stuck in the 757 is what I always like to tell people, because I went to Christopher Newport University for my undergrad, where I majored in biology. I was very interested in health sciences. My high school actually had a health science program to prepare students for, being involved in either nursing or going to medical school. And I really thought that that was the path that I wanted to pursue until late in my high school career. I actually took Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow. As many people know, you have to take an art credit. I am not an artist, and so I kind of found a loophole, and I guess they see teaching as an art down in Virginia Beach, so that's how I took Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow. And so that small fire to become an educator was kind of ignited. And then after my time at Christopher Newport University, I was trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. I spent a year working at higher education. I worked at Virginia Wesleyan University as an admissions counselor, but I was really craving the classroom. So I went back to school at William & Mary, got my master's in teaching, and now I've been at Brooke Point going on my fourth year, really enjoying teaching my craft. So it's been awesome being a part of Stafford County.
Well, first of all, we are so glad you're here. I guess my second question is, or my second thought is, with the Teach for Tomorrow program, what was it in that program that kind of ignited your spark, ignited your passion for education? Was there one particular thing?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think, as a student, when you're younger, you see teaching as it is from the front, but having that background view of, going to faculty meetings, and we were required to go to a school board meeting, and we were learning about, all the ins and outs of what it took to be a teacher, and really how much of an impact that can have, as well as, other opportunities to seek clubs or become a sponsor and really impact students in meaningful ways while still pursuing your passions. Because, I'm still an anatomy teacher. I get to share that passion I have for that content with my students every day, but also supporting them is something you don't really get to do in many other professions.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's something I've really come to love and appreciate about middle and high school teachers is, each of you really has a passion for that one particular subject a lot of times, or that one particular issue. And that's the second piece. And it's not that elementary teachers don't, but I think elementary teachers just kind of have that different perspective, in terms of that. So this next question is one of my favorite. I love asking literally every educator I ever meet this question. So did you have an educator or a champion or someone in your life who had a positive impact on you, who kind of, maybe you carry some of those characteristics and those traits into your classroom today?
Yeah, and so we were just talking about Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow, and actually my teacher in that course, her name is Meg Manugo. She's still a teacher, nationally board certified teacher down in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Has moved into assisting working with gifted students, and she has been a career educator, and so she still supports me to this day. But back when I was in high school, there's always a push, and not to talk negative about our profession, but a lot of times people say, what else could you do? Or, my specific high school, everybody was being pushed into the medical field. And she was really somebody who, illuminated that teaching is very noble profession, something that should be sought after. And at the end of the day, something that is really exciting and gives back to, both you and the students. Because I think you would agree, there's daily interactions I have with students that give me enough energy to make it through the faculty meetings and the bus duties and all the things that come with teaching. And she has been an awesome resource and continues to be one this day, which I really appreciate.
That's incredible. And you're so right. Maybe there are a few less glamorous elements of teaching, but those interactions we have with students and, specifically now for me, working with new teachers really does that for me. That really fuels us and gets us through those maybe less glamorous elements of teaching. And just makes it all better, especially on those hard days, because we all have them.
Yeah. Well, and we're fortunate because, I have friends in many different fields, and a lot of times they don't have those types of interactions where they're working, behind a desk or whatever they may be doing. There's not always those positive interactions.
Yeah. And the second thing you said that really stuck with me, your champion educator is still in touch with you today, still gives you advice, etc. That is what I love. One of the things I love the most about the teaching profession is we really look out for one another. We all find that person or that mentor or that champion who we stay in touch with, and who kind of powers us through, as we kind of navigate our career. So that's just awesome. I love learning about the champions. So, CJ, let's move into your excellence. So, it is clear, okay, this is why you are episode number 2 on this podcast, that you are Stafford County excellence. And we are stronger when we learn from one another. So, could you share an example of a best practice or an innovation that you currently have in your classroom, for our listeners to learn from?
Yeah. Well, Dan, it's funny because you say an innovation. This is something I definitely didn't create. It's something that I hadn't done before Stafford kind of implemented it, but it's so simple. If you remember when we did kind of the countywide professional development about writing across the curriculum, writing across the content, I've begun to implement science writing by having a daily journal entry, as well as having different assignments that focus on student writing. I was fortunate enough during that professional development, I worked with Mike Pratt at Central Office to help with the presentation and work with earth science teachers about implementing these writing strategies. And I found that it's been a huge success in my classroom. My wife is also an English teacher at Brooke Point High School with me,
Nice.
and so I obviously have to promote English. But what I found, when we question students, if we haven't given them a chance to write, they're oftentimes very hesitant. Something about writing gives all of us and our students this confidence where they know what they wrote and they feel confident about what they wrote, so they're willing to share, and it really allows for deeper conversations and a stronger connection to the content, which is, should be every educator's goal.
Absolutely. So, just to ask about that a little deep. First of all, I love writing across the contents. I know that's one of our focuses as a school division. So, I guess the question I have for you is: do you allow your students to free write with that reflection? Do you give them a specific prompt? What are some of the different structures that you use to set that up?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Dan. And so I keep a daily notebook where it is focused on content, but I try to make it more of a free response. But I have themed questions. So for example, on Mondays, we do a moral dilemma Monday.
Nice.
And so I'll take those. For anatomy, it's really easy. Just watch any Grey's Anatomy episode and then you have one. And then for environmental science, I try to find things, with current things going on in the world, environmental issues, and I'll have students write about them, about their thoughts and feelings, and then I'll actually have them, break into groups and we'll discuss them. And so those themes kind of carry throughout the week. And we also do TED Talk Thursday, so we'll watch a TED Talk and then free write about what we think.
Okay.
Find Out Friday, we look at news articles and we'll connect them to our content. And those are just, our warm-ups. And so I also have other assignments throughout the year to try to integrate both research writing and creative writing, because I think it's really important for students to have all types of writing.
Absolutely. I love that intentional focus on writing, and it sounds like it's literally all throughout every single block that you teach. That's really awesome. And that's really something I think that whether you're a kindergarten to 12th grade teacher, whatever content you teach, you really can incorporate that writing in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's not a language arts class. So
yeah, well, and I think that was the misconception I had as well. Is like, I teach science. Why, am I teaching writing? And obviously, I'm not focusing too much on grammar or spelling mistakes within reason, because that's
Sure.
outside of our content. I really want to see how that content can be kind of transformed into what the student can use and understand.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me of something when I with my fifth graders, when I would have them write. Sometimes they would get so hung up on the grammar piece of the writing that sometimes it would almost limit them from writing. They weren't as fluent as writers. Just able to get those ideas down because they were kind of hung up on that. So sometimes I would find even. If you were like, hey, if I said, hey guys, okay, don't worry about the grammar right now. We're going to fix that down the road. Just get your ideas out. That really helped them as well. So let's talk about your thoughts. So we are, like we said, we're in the second week of school, and I'm really interested to kind of find out your thinking with this. So you teach ecology and anatomy, correct?
Yes.
And these are elective classes.
Yes, they are.
So how do you work to build a sense of community, specifically in a high school classroom where, you only have your students for a set amount of time? What are some things you do in the beginning of the year to get your classroom kind of gelling, get them working together?
Yeah, and like you said, it's having this many people, this many bodies in a classroom, it's really important that we're all on the same page when we're moving, when we're doing lab stations, when we're limited to about 10 minutes per lab station, and we're trying to figure out, COVID, contact tracing. And so it does start a little bit with icebreakers that are, not necessarily related to content. But then it slowly becomes, after the first couple of days where we'll do some small icebreakers, then we start talking about setting expectations. And so my students work individually to define expectations in our classroom. Then we break into small groups, and then we break into, the whole group, and we set those expectations for ourselves. And it's nice because, the students have a voice, and then obviously there's some non-negotiables that we throw in there as educators. And then, it really sets the tone for the year. And then to keep it going, one of my themes, I do a team build Tuesday. Okay. And I tell my students, we take a 10-minute break from content and we do some type of team building exercise. And so sometimes those are icebreakers, and then slowly they move into things like, I asked them, if you had a $1,000 grant at Brooke Point High School, what would you use it for?
Nice.
And then these students work in groups and they come up with what they would use it for. And I'll share it with administrators, or I'll keep them to myself. But just to give students a feeling that they're connected to each other, to the school. And then obviously, sneak some content in there when we can.
Oh yeah. I love your intentional focus, CJ, on team building, even beyond, it sounds like it's beyond the first couple weeks of school. You're saying, you have Team Build Tuesday where you're taking that time intentionally every week. That's so powerful. And that's really something, one of our big audiences, as I said in our first episode, is our Mentor 360 program and all of our new educators. And I think sometimes, as educators, we talk about how relationships are so important. But sometimes maybe after that second, third week, we have so much coming at us that sometimes we forget to focus on those again. So setting aside that time is really awesome. And again, another reason why you are an example of Stafford County excellence. So this is a question I have for you. I'm really interested to see. I didn't put this in our last episode with Chris, but I'm thinking, so, COVID really had changed our thinking with a lot. So is there anything in your practice or anything in your classroom that you kind of, I'm trying to think of positives that maybe came from the pandemic and pandemic teaching. Is there anything you currently have in your classroom now? Any practice that you kind of changed or took from COVID?
Yeah, I would say even working in PLCs before, there was kind of this expectation that, student notes weren't posted. They were things that were, given to students in class. And now and I think all of my colleagues are at the same place where, all of my notes are posted, all of my assignments are posted. Obviously, I want students in class every day. That's the goal. But as you've mentioned, there's a lot going on right now,
Sure.
COVID related, not COVID related. And at the end of the day, our goal as educators is to make sure these students are getting that content. And so just making that readily available, I think, has been something that I personally and many other educators might not have been doing all they could before. And now I'm doing absolutely everything I can to make sure students have access wherever they may be.
That's awesome. Yeah, it did definitely make us think about our equitable practices and making sure that we're meeting the needs of every kid, wherever they may be. So, my favorite part of the podcast, the final three questions. So, I'm going to name off, I'm just going to read a phrase, and I just want you to complete it, okay? So, here we go. The thing I love the most about teaching is...
The daily, non-content related interactions with students.
Yes, that's awesome. Yes, I so agree with that too. Dear first year teacher me.
Your colleagues go beyond your building.
That's good stuff too. It's all about our podcast too. And finally, Stafford County is the place to teach because
they will continue to support your professional development.
yes. And before we close out for the day, CJ, this totally slipped my mind, but I want to make sure I make this clear. Number one, you were named one of our first class new teachers of the year, your first year of teaching, correct?
I was.
And you were named the Virginia. This is a long title here, so I'm going to get it all out. The Virginia Association of Science Teacher Award for Outstanding Science Teaching in Environmental Science in the year 2020.
Yes, that is also true.
So we folks are in the presence of greatness and excellence. CJ, I just really appreciate you coming on the podcast today and sharing that greatness with the rest of our school division, because you're doing amazing things for your students at Brooke Point High School.
Well, thank you, Dan. I want to thank you. This is a really awesome opportunity. And, I really look forward to hearing from all your other educators, because I watched the episode last week and, really just give some energy and excitement about what other people are doing in their classroom.
Yes. This is like my favorite part of the week, seriously. Talking to educators across the division, and your excellence, as I said, is one of the reasons that Stafford County Public Schools is just this amazing place to learn, lead, and teach. So, CJ, take care. To our audience out there, make sure you tune in every single Wednesday on the Stafford County Public Schools YouTube page for another edition of Stafford Excellence EdTalks. See you guys next time.